Hi, I'm Eric Schumacher-Rasmussen. I'm the editor and VP of Streaming Media and the conference chair for Streaming Media West Connect. We were hoping to be in Huntington Beach this week, but alas, it was not to be. Once again, we come to you virtually, and thank you for joining us. We have got a great group of panelists here to talk about large-scale live event monetization. Before we jump in, though, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First, I would be remiss if I did not mention that we are planning, and I do say planning, Streaming Media East to be in person in Boston in May of 2022, May 24th and 25th to be exact. We will have another Streaming Media Connect virtual conference between now and then, though, coming up in February. If you're interested in speaking at either of those events, keep your eyes open at streamingmedia.com and in our email newsletters for more information about the call for speakers. A few other housekeeping notes. For questions, if you have any questions for our panelists, you can enter those using the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom window. Just click on Q&A and enter your question, and I will relay it to our panelists as we go along or at the end of the discussion, depending on where it fits. The chat will be open, but we do request that you use the Q&A instead. It's just easier for me to keep track of questions if they come in there. Also, transcripts or subtitles are likely enabled on your screen. If you're seeing them and want to get rid of them, you can go to the live transcript CC button at the bottom of your window, click on that, and then click on disable transcripts, and that'll shut them off. Finally, for all of you attending today, you're entered in a drawing to win an Amazon gift card. Stick around till the end, though, because that's when we'll announce it, and you must be present to win. So with that, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the diamond sponsors of Streaming Media West Connect, for helping make this entire conference possible. And that's Conviva, Limelight Networks, Signient, and Video Guys. And we have a brief video message from them right now.
NDI November. NDI products and NDI guests, including Dr. Cross to kick everything off November 2nd. Start watching Tuesdays at 3 p.m.
Register now at videoguys.com to make sure you don't miss any of our NDI November webinars. Registering will give you a chance to win one of our giveaways, including a HuddleCam HD Pro EPTZ webcam with NDI, a Telestream Wirecast Pro license for Windows or Mac, a Bulldog Flex of your choice, the New Tech University NDI class and exam, or a copy of the unofficial guide to NDI.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.
Thanks again to those sponsors, and I'd also like to thank Zixi for sponsoring this panel. Zixi's Eric Bolten will be joining the discussion, and he'll also be giving an Innovation Hour presentation in just a couple of hours. We have got a great panel, as I said, a great group of speakers to talk about a topic that everyone's really thinking about these days, and that's large-scale live event monetization. Certainly, the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns changed how we all approach live streaming. We talked in the last panel about how it changed the approach to the technical side of things. This hour, we're going to talk about how it changed the approach or perhaps made us rethink how we monetize those events. So I'd like to begin by just introducing all of our panelists. So let's start off with Eric Bolten from Zixi. Eric, good to see you.
Great to see you, Eric. It's It's nice to see you virtually. Unfortunately, not on the West Coast.
Yeah, exactly. We do what we can. For those who may not know what Zixi does, can you tell our audience a little bit about Zixi?
Sure thing. Zixi is a software-defined video platform specializing in live linear and live events. And we are a software-defined solution that goes multi-cloud, multiple architectures, multiple topologies, and any IP network from anywhere to anywhere.
Great. It's been really interesting and exciting to see Zixi grow from being this company that made a protocol and had this little booth in the corner of NAB to you're everywhere now, man.
We're happy to hear that. I remember that small booth, and yes, can't wait to have larger booths out there. But no, it's been good. We continue to deepen. We're over 700 main clients, 300 technology partners. Made really big advances within the 5G realm, which will play into what we'll discuss today, and now making a very large investment on AI and ML initiatives.
Terrific. Next up, John Petrocelli from Bulldog Digital Media. Again, John, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Eric. Great to see you as well.
And once again, tell the audience a little bit about Bulldog Media and the kinds of work that you do.
Sure. Bulldog DM, we're the world's most experienced live stream studio. We've been in business in this space for 9 years. I've personally been in it for 20. We provide all of the turnkey services that a stakeholder, i.e., a brand, a content creator, an agency would need to pull off a premium live streamed experience. And we, really apply a best practice approach to that, to the industry. And our clients include Netflix, AT&T, Jeep, Nissan, Hyundai, Spotify, TikTok, and the like. And really, it's an emphasis on the topic we're having today is premium events and executing them at scale.
All right. Next up is Adam Paul from 7 Cinematics. Adam, good to see you.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Yeah, I'm Adam Paul, as said, CEO of 7 Cinematics. We're really more on the content and creative and concept to completion side. We really don't get into the digital, the actual streaming software or hardware side of the business. We actually are just really content, creativity, work with artists, networks, streaming platforms, management, some of the same clients that they've talked about, and build, these really ultra high-end cinematic experiences. And we really, concentrate on storytelling. We think that music is not a matter of fact typed broadcast like sports is. We think that there's a story to be told in each and every concert, and we think that people go to kind of relieve themselves from their problems there. And we feel that a great duty when we direct, create, and produce a live stream that people really get their money's worth.
That was the first. I've made it through a day and a half without being on mute. So thanks, Adam. Our next speaker, and I can't thank him enough for joining from his car because of traffic in Los Angeles, Tim Westergren, who some of our audience might know from, well, starting Pandora, which I think we've all heard of. And Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you've been working on lately.
Yeah, so I've been at this for a little while. I did found Pandora back in 2000. Spent about 17, 18 years there building that into a large streaming product. Spent a few years in investing, and then a few years ago co-founded this business, Sessions Live, which is a platform that really does two things. It's a place to cultivate and grow audiences, and then the second is to turn that audience into income. So it's how to create enduring, high efficiency income for artists and creators, and we've had a lot of success at that. We're just a little over a year out the gates, have about 4,000 artists performing a week. And what I've seen, which is kind of a lifelong quest of mine, is I've seen systematically these artists make good amounts of money and have that grow methodically over time. So I think we're on our way to building something pretty special.
Excellent. That's a great place to start. And I'd like to kick off the conversation by positing something that may or may not be true, but I think it probably is. It seems like one of the biggest lessons of the last 18 months has been that live streaming offers monetization opportunities that may not necessarily cannibalize on the in-person experience. You know, for the longest time, that was conventional wisdom, right? That if you live stream something, people are going to be less likely to buy tickets, less likely to attend the in-person event. It seems like now that we've been in a situation, to varying degrees for 18 months where people haven't been able to attend live events, people have realized that that will always be the case, that there will always be more people who want to attend a live event, whether it's music or sports or anything else, than can actually do so in person, whether it's for reasons of finances, geography, health, whatever it might be. And so it really seems like we're entering a new era of live streamed entertainment experiences. What are your thoughts on a future where more and more live events will be streamed? Tim, can we start with you?
Yeah, I think clearly, the pandemic accelerated the whole notion of live streaming. It's been in fits and starts, because you're, pointing out, and a lot of those events have been poorly attended or under monetized. And I think everybody's sort of racing to figure out how to build something that actually is of value to musicians. I think what's going to come out of this is not just the notion of, oh yes, it's a place to play live. It's more than that. I think it's a place to own and really wrap your arms around your audience in an enduring way. So unlike the sort of real world event of you play your show and then you're done, how do you turn these touch points, kind of this surface area, if you will, of online performance and content into really a long-term relationship with a fan who will become a patron, not just for one event in the moment, but in an enduring way? And that to me is the missing link in this business for decades. There's a lot of content around, but the vast majority of artists, the vast majority make very little money and are making less, the vast majority, as time goes on. So I think that's kind of to me, the holy grail.
Well, and obviously I'd like everyone to follow up on that, but it certainly seems like the Spotify model has heightened public awareness as well as the artist awareness that they're not getting their fair share of the revenue out there. And, all too often when we talk about monetization, we focus on the brands, we focus on the venues, we focus on everyone but the actual person on stage. So I'm glad to hear you bring that up. Anyone else want to chime in about your thoughts about this new era that we're entering into?
Well, I think the question about, cannibalization of actual tickets to shows, just the inverse is true. There's no substitute. Streaming is not, a replacement for being at a venue, whether that's, the Club Nokia or it's the Rose Bowl for an experience. And in fact, I would look at streaming of these experiences as almost an advertisement for when that tour or that festival or that performance is going to come to your area, right? You've experienced the live stream, you've seen this great performance by this artist. And, I would say I'm a former AEG person, so I kind of understand the promotion world as well. But I would take Michael Rapinoe's perspective, right? When he, a couple of years ago, cut a deal with the platform Vice to live stream some performances and concerts on that platform, and did an interview, I think, with CNBC or MSNBC. And the first question they asked him was, "Hey, Michael, aren't you going to cannibalize ticket sales?" And he says, it's just the opposite. The more live video that we serve as a promoter, the more ticket inventory. And that's really for also, a big service is done for the bands that aren't, Jay-Z, Madonna, Coldplay. The discovery element that a live stream performance provides to the audience is pretty powerful. And there's also been some data about this too. I think it's like 43% of people that watch a live stream have a propensity to purchase a ticket when that experience comes to them. And as we get, post-pandemic, there's this idea of hybrid, right? Ticketed shows that are going to be amplified and live streamed out to the world. And that's kind of the perfect storm for that. The user behavior now, everybody's streamed something live, whether you're a grandparent doing a Zoom session with your family, you're a child who's on distance learning, or you've watched and participated in a conference, or you watched a versus battle on Instagram. The user behavior is now universal. And same for the artists. They're much more open to doing this now that they've had to perform in their bedroom or their living room and their husband or their wife or their pet or their baby has walked into as they performed. So I think this kind of crunch time that we've gone through, where all this has been suspended, is now going to lead to a place where this is going to be a logical amplification of dates that artists are going to book when they get back on the road.
Adam, Eric, any thoughts you want to add before we move on?
I mean, you know, the biggest thing that I think is, and I'll probably say this a couple times through this is, you know, to what John said, yes, you know, as long as we are encapsulating this experience, we're never going to be that live experience where no one here is claiming to do that. But if we can give them 85% of that, and so if it's an in-person event that's happening, that you can give a look through the peephole at what this is, in a really, you know, encompassing and in a way you feel the music and see the music and hear the music. And then, you know, these events that are becoming more sponsor driven and kind of the specialty VIP ultra high end kind of once in a lifetime experiences. You know, I think, you know, it's the Monday Night Football effect. They said, you know, it's gonna, you know, kill ticket sales, and it, you know, Monday Night Football, people want to go and be a part of it now and say, oh yeah, I was on that stream, or I'm in that crowd, and I'm, you know, I think it builds, it helps build the marketing and helps advance all of it. And it's done exactly the opposite of, you know, I think the market had a little dip just because there's a lot of, you know, no one knew where they were spending the money or how they were spending the money or what was going to happen. Right as we started to get going again, you know, Delta variant came back out, so it's been a lot of confusion, but I think it's going to ultimately settle out in a really simplistic way for the future. If your band is providing a beautiful show and we're providing beautiful content, people are going to always want to buy it.
Well, and I think you would all agree, as we've watched, and, you know, we started doing Zixi high profile streaming events for the UFC back in the day, when those would be $60 million pay-per-views. And now that's progressed its way towards a new culture of virtualization and remote production and basically remote ops across the board. And all of those long range plans existed. You get a pandemic, you break glass, but there's tons of pent up demand from the entertainment aspect. And like what you were saying, John, does this, you know, there used to be three things on a television show: the show, the promo to tell you to watch the show at Thursday, which that doesn't happen, and an advertisement or a subscription to pay for it. What you have now is a whole different set of tools, a different consumer way of approaching it. It's going to go even more exponential. You can't mix up what a live event is, but you will be augmenting immersive realities, trying to find ways to take the event itself and add things on it, particularly with young audiences that, you know, are open to and have access to edge devices, mobile edge compute, all that. And you're going to be tracking data, and you're going to be able to take a given set of shows and a given set of events and be able to truly optimize across your production value spectrum.
Can I add something here? You know, I think there are two parallel industries happening at the same time. There's the incumbent one, which is the music industry of, you know, the pop artists, popular artists with large fan bases, which is the industry of music. And there's a new one that's coming along that involves millions of musicians and people coming in through TikTok, et cetera. And these are musicians who I think are not interested in the old model, namely, all my music's available for free on large platforms that make all the money and I make nothing, or I forfeit my future to get signed to some kind of central distributor or marketer. It's a different approach. And I think that we're going to see that population of artists overtake the artists of prior years. And I think it's not going to look like it did in the past, where it's big tentpole events, big promotions, you know, high production costs, high production value. Those will exist. But I think it's going to be dwarfed by this population that are coming on and doing things in smaller ways. And I think once that audience of musicians gets its hands on an effective marketing tool, which so far it hasn't, it's going to just go through the roof. And the industry that 5 years from now will not look like it does today. And that to me is the most fascinating part of what's happening with online streaming, because it really has, it's put tools in the hands of musicians that can go it alone or go it on their own way. They haven't had an audience yet, but when you solve that, it's going to be something else. Yeah,
and as you say that, I sort of look back on the evolution of the music industry, and this began in many ways certainly long before the pandemic, long before even Pandora or Spotify. If you go back, the mid 1980s was sort of the last era of the huge blockbuster, where the blockbuster ruled everything, right? And we've had blips in between now and then with Beyonce and Coldplay and some of the artists that John mentioned, but the music industry as a whole, and I know we're focusing on music here, and that's partially because of who's on the panel, but the word has always been fragmentation, but that fragmentation has been producing things like Bandcamp and SoundCloud, where musicians are figuring out ways to monetize and connect with audiences that have never existed before. Getting back to the pandemic, John, you proposed the question, acknowledging the fact that the live streaming sector has really exploded in the last 18 months, and lots of new companies and service providers have entered the market. Many of them, though, have struggled executing larger scale live events. And, maybe do we need to define what large scale means? It's in the title of the panel. Just something to keep in the back of your head, perhaps. But how does the industry adjust, the live streaming industry adjust to be more readily available to deliver these experiences going forward, so that, so that the technology almost vanishes for the viewer?
As somebody who's been in this business for a very long time, even 6 years ago, I had to explain what live streaming was if I was having a normal, dinner conversation. That has radically changed, right? It's become probably one of the hottest topics on the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. As a result, we've seen hundreds of millions of venture dollars flow into the space. And, I've had, executives at major talent agencies tell me there are between 1 and 200 companies providing just live stream music pay-per-view capabilities, which is, that's completely mind-blowing in general. And unfortunately, my perspective is to do this at scale, it's not easy. And I don't think you learn how to do that in 90 days or 4 months or 5 months. And a lot of thinking and a lot of nuances have to go into pulling off not just a performance. It could be a product launch, movie premiere, something that's got a large audience. There's a lot happening in terms of redundancy and stress on the networks, et cetera. And we've seen that. I think we've seen major music experiences have significant challenges. A few didn't even make it to the air. And that's a noteworthy problem. Further to that, a lot of these companies were doing these shows as, on demand. They were pre-recording and shooting the artists and editing. They're putting them in a music performance in an abandoned castle or an atrium or, a mansion, which is great. But the reality is, the audience wants that live performance. And a lot of these companies, I think, are going to struggle when they go back into a venue in a room where you have to be cognizant of, now your client's also the promoter, and the promoter's obligation is to the ticket buyers that have come and bought tickets that are physically in the room. So you've got things like seat kills to contemplate, where you can put your cameras, how you're going to run cable, what is the internet connectivity of that venue. If you're going to use the borrowed internet that everybody in the room is on with their Wi-Fi, that's another challenge and a problem. So a lot of these problems I don't think are going to go away. And I think, the newer companies need to contemplate and really focus and double down on things like redundancy and, running a primary and a backup encoder, a primary transmission path and a backup transmission path. And also, if you're going to sell tickets, it's the inverse of the traditional world. If someone goes on sale, a tour goes on sale, well, it's a popular artist or even, a tour of some kind. Everyone's going to rush and they're going to buy those tickets because they want a good ticket for that performance. In the digital virtual live streaming world, it's different. No matter when you buy your ticket, you're going to have a great vantage point. Someone like Adam's going to shoot it. It's going to look amazing. So you can buy your ticket 30 minutes or day of before the show. And I think that's a learning curve. You've got, it's more of a U shape, and you've got to be aware of that kind of influx of people coming in and purchasing and going through that authorization step, which again, I don't think if you just got your venture funding, you've been doing this for 4 months, you're going to comprehend and know that. So, it kind of goes back to the old school basic ways. We had to get into this business early on. We had to deal with all kinds of bandwidth constraints and issues. And, this industry got a lot of attention for its failures, way back when the Victoria's Secret show crashed, and that was like front page news. I think Oprah Winfrey did a big variety show. You might remember this, Eric, and that had all kinds of challenges. And we got a lot of attention for the failures of the industry and not the successes. So, from my perspective, it's really kind of understanding and predicting and understanding that you're going to have a big audience tune in, or just a sizable audience. And how do you support that? That's kind of going back to the days of pre-planning and infrastructure, and again, redundancy throughout your workflow.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you're exactly right there. I think, like what we started doing and what was unique about what we did was true live cinematic, and going through all of those, doing the logistic work. The logistic work is what people are like, oh yeah, we'll just throw up some cameras, or oh, we'll do a sports broadcast, or oh, we'll do bull crap. It doesn't work that way. You have to have the black eyes, the scratches, the claw marks from fighting your way through how hard this is. And, it was reversed for us to kind of go to these during the pandemic, some pre-recorded content. It was, different for us. I mean, we excel at it and it looks great, and we're good at it because we have, some non-scripted background and television show background and things like that. And it's great. But, ultimately, the true live experience, that's the monster of the beast of it. And a lot of it has to be that live deal. Like you say, you will get eaten alive if you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know, if you haven't been through this experientially. Not like, hey, we're, a Hollywood film company and we've got the cameras and we've got all the parts and pieces of the puzzle. But if you haven't had the SHIT kicked out of you by this industry, then you don't know, and you have to go through those crucibles. I mean, we did it in 2014, and I thought people were going to die when I set out we were going to shoot it in 23.9.8. They're like, it's an impossibility. And so we did the research, we put it together, we made the stream, and we made it work. And, a lot of what we've done is like, I come from an engineering and chemistry. I reverse engineer things. I'm going to go and look at it and re-engineer it and figure out how we make it look pretty is really like, doing it and figuring it out in that way. But just to answer, what is a live, large scale monetization event? I mean, I think it needs to be big artists or a big event. It needs to sometimes be multiple artists. It needs to be, something of, it's not, Sally Sue at the corner jazz bar. This is, somebody at Red Rocks, or somebody at, Madison Square Garden, or, like what we just did at the House of Horrors, something special, that there's a multi-layered of real broadcast, real production, real marketing, real, all of the layers and the pieces of the puzzle are put together to where there's, it's not just your back door or backyard or, in your little studio thing, which is a very valuable and valued asset. But these are large scale things with a lot of dollars and a lot of stress and a lot of tickets and a lot of things that go really bad if they don't do it. And I think, the lessons that the four of the gentlemen on this can say is, if you're not ready for it, don't jump into it, because the risk reward can be very, very, very harsh on you there. But, it's all doable. It's all learnable, and they're exciting. I think we're all kind of, gluttons for punishment in some senses with these things, because it's fun. It's fun working through the puzzle.
I would throw that. It's a long and interesting set of insights into traditional production value and live production, and it's a bigger deal. What has happened too since, I would say, right around 2012, it was still considered black magic, and I was told, like 2017, a Super Bowl will never be over IP, let alone unmanaged IP. So much for that. You know, we've done Olympics, we've done World Cups, and you've got very major brands like Premier League. I think what's happening too is that Tim referenced a democratization of content that's coming, and I think that's true. But I think what's a little bit required in that chasm is a little more refining of these back-end cloud systems, and that's kind of what we're going through right now. And so 5G, under admitted buzzword, but a real thing, is going to suddenly give bandwidth everywhere, and you don't have to worry about dropping that fiber line or how am I going to get the different pieces and trying to cable. And I'm going to be able to use mobile devices that have phones that are arguably professional near quality. You're going to have things like image recognition, and we were talking about what's the most experienced thing and why you don't care about where you sit in the venue. Maybe because the NFT is more important to you than it was actually seeing the performance of whatever that is. So I can now bond between a 5G, a 4G LTE, internet, and fiber, and that all seamlessly happens in a back. Those before required 3 and 4 and 6 different teams, depending what you were doing. And as we all know, months and months of planning. We can do a little sports piece, but it would be the same for a, Jay-Z, Beyonce. The NHL works with us, works with Amazon. They could spin up their infrastructure for every game, and they know how many games are going to be. And we're all now in another phase of optimization. And meanwhile, 20 megabit HEVC 4K UHD looks absolutely incredible. And of course, everyone would have thrown up on that idea. The idea of stream to store, what was considered a ProRes asset, moving into the MES. So the tool sets are moving. I think it was 3 CESs ago, and we still had all of that. We were talking about autonomous vehicles. But the biggest issue, I think it was the head of vehicles for Mercedes, said that technology was going to advance as much in the next 10 years, i.e. 7 years ago, as it did in the previous 50. And I think that's one they're seeing. And that has a huge implication on business models, period, finish, which is kind of what I think we're circling around.
Yeah, so let's get back to talking a little bit more about the business models that are enabled by all of this technology. Adam, what do brand marketers need to prioritize, and what do they need to get from the live streaming industry in order to achieve success with live events?
I think like what Tim was saying is like, individually, if someone is coming in to do it, it's a way for a company like Sessions to market across those platforms and do a numbers game. But if you're talking about large scale monetization or large scale streaming events, I think there's 2 things. You got to be really, really, really careful, because the consumer right now, more than ever, does not like to get a product pushed down their throat. They hate it. They especially when they're paying for it, they feel like they want it pure. So there has to be this, like, if it's a ticketed event and there's also a sponsor involved, you got to be really, really wise about how you integrate their product into the stream. Now, I think it's on the social platforms and places and around the stream, it's a very powerful touch point or a point of purchase for people to of like-minded, very targeted advertising to get to. But I think when we did a number of different streams this year with branded partners, and obviously the brand partners are they're always going to want their logo everywhere all the time in any possible way that they could get it. And I think sports, it's a little easier to do that. I think the authenticity of music is such a special and personal thing to people, and people really feel like they're part of a club when they listen to Fish or Grateful Dead or the Chili Peppers or John Legend or whoever it is their per se drug of choice. And it's Bud Light Seltzer is 100 times in front of their picture, I think it softens the message. So my advice to anybody doing it is make sure that you keep the experience authentic, either ticketed or branded. And I think if it's free, then there's a little more space to do some of those things and have some of those brand partners. And I think, with what Eric does with some of the bigger sporting events, and it's a little more accepted and normal, but no one is used to going to a Fish show or a Lizzo show or whatever and getting logos put in their face. So I would think just keeping the authenticity of the experience is super important to the people that are streaming it. But I think to brands, if they can understand that if there's a way that they can take that authenticity and use that authenticity to legitimize their product, but not over blast it, it's going to have way more staying power than if you overdo it with over branding it.
Can I have a comment on this? Just hear Adam's thoughts. I spent a long time in the brand and ad business. Built $1.5 billion annual business at Pandora. So I've wrestled with this business model for years. And I think there are two shortcomings of it. One is it only works for artists with giant audiences for the most part, because brands will spend where you've really aggregated an audience already. And the second thing with the ad business is, in general, it's a really low efficiency way for the artist to make money. So really, Facebook, Instagram are kind of, in some ways, a sort of seminal example that advertising supported businesses, very, very little money flows to creators on those platforms. I think, and I guess I'm coming at this from a slightly different perspective, that what excites me is the fact that, there are artists on sessions with 200 fans making 150 grand a year, but 200 fans. And that to me is the model of the future. And, in terms of what business model this enables, it's direct to fan, which I know is a tired cliche line that's never come true, but it's beginning to happen now. And I think the great opportunity lies in allowing some larger proportion of the 15 million self-identified musicians on Facebook to actually start building these sort of small businesses of their own. And that is an absolute gigantic business. The two things they need for that are some way to source and collect and grow those fans, which is not easy. And the second thing is monetization, right? And putting up a tip jar or selling tickets is not going to do it. You have to build a much more sophisticated system for the form of connection and the way a fan is encouraged and incentivized to patronize the artist. And I think it's something much more complex than what has existed in the past. So I think there are two different worlds colliding, or at least happening at the same time, right?
I want to add just one quick thing to that. Other important value to the larger scale things, and I'm not talking about it makes sense to this too with the individual artist, but the content now, like everyone realized when COVID happened, if you didn't have content, you were out of luck. There was no way to get it. There was no way to make an event or go back and have this content. So making sure that you're capturing and taking all of this content that can come from stream, so it's not just a single burn, not just a single explosion from there, that the band, the management, the sponsors, the people can have and use for the next few months is a very valuable thing too. And once the authentic experiences happen, then it's a little more palatable to use the content. And obviously there's not as much of a value to the content then, but you're at least still using it for promotion or self-promotion or marketing or things like that.
Tim, real quick, is Sessions doing, and I see John, you want to jump in as well, is Sessions doing anything with sponsors or branded? No, it is true, purely direct to fan. Okay, that's
yeah. And it's funny with that, but I'm saying I wrestle with that tension. The basic fact is a brand is at odds with the artistic experience. That's just how it is. And it is a delicate, painful balance to give the brand the exposure and the ownership that they want. It's a value to them, while giving the artist the sort of, like when I'm impinging on the artist, and it's a tension, it's there. So.
And I see that, even, if you go to the Sessions Live website, the only branding for Sessions itself is just the text Sessions up in the upper left-hand corner, right? It gets the brand almost completely out of the way.
And so one anecdote, then I'll yield is we had an artist who played a show a couple months ago, she made $10,000 in 45 minutes from about 300 people attending. And I was looking at, $10,000, where that puts that artist in the sort of pantheon of streaming revenue over the course of the year. That put her as a solo artist. This is someone who couldn't fill a coffee shop anywhere in the world with her fan base. That makes our top few thousand earner on subscription products and streaming services in one 45-minute session. And that right there says to me, what is so wrong with the music industry right now? I mean, musicians are not capturing any of the value they're creating.
I see live streaming as a massive opportunity for Madison Ave in general. I think advertising has been the most disrupted industry on the planet in the last 2 decades. I think it's a $503 billion or $1 trillion industry that has had serious problems. And I learned this kind of, being at AEG. AEG's masters at getting brands to promote and sponsor things across their ecosystem, right? The Staples Center, or I remember they didn't even have a football stadium yet. State Farm had committed to the potential stadium, committed naming rights dollars as well. And you see that with sponsorships of tours. And the big takeaway for me was Coachella makes a lot of money on brand sponsorships, but if you've been to Coachella, you rarely see a logo throughout that entire experience, all 3 days you're there. It's very subtle. Heineken has, I think the beer rights, but it's not in your face like a NASCAR event where the driver's got 89 different logos on them. And when I started this business, I also looked at I noticed that AEG would have loved to have streamed Coachella, but they're too busy dealing with selling tickets and sponsorships and on-site activations. They don't want to deal with the streaming components. However, they would love to stream. And I realized that we were doing these shows on YouTube with T-Mobile, Wrigley's Five Gum, and others, and State Farm. And I built this business. I went to the brands and asked them, hey, what are your pain points? What are your problems today? And it was a recurring challenge of ad blocking, brand safety, and there was a third as well, but consistent problems for them. And the other was cord cutting. So what I have found is what these brands want is attention. They want engagement, and live video executed properly clearly unlocks that opportunity. The average consumer attention span has dropped from 12 seconds 10 years ago down to, I think, 8 seconds today. But if we execute a live stream and do it well, the average watch time, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. We've done, microsites for our clients. Average watch time is 41 minutes. That becomes a huge opportunity for them. And for brands to put dollars into that, it's a fraction for what they would spend on a commercial, right? They realize that the fan they're trying to reach, they're not watching Law and Order on Thursday night and sitting through the State Farm ad, right? They're just you're not even getting that client. For them to reallocate those media dollars into live video is a massive opportunity. I also think there's a huge opportunity around brands sponsoring pay-per-view ticketed experiences because of the watch time. We've seen when people buy a ticket to a live stream, they'll watch every single second of that live stream. And it's certainly going to be a smaller audience than it would be if it was in the clear, but that's a tremendous opportunity where a T-Mobile could pre-buy 2,000 tickets, or an insurance company could say, hey, it's Geico. If you sign up, come early, we'll allocate ticket dollars to you as well. So, monetization is a very broad topic, but I do believe that the brand dollars on Madison Ave, and I think we as an industry need to have a better way of talking to the people that hold those budgets and talk to them about things like engagement, right? And reporting we can give back to somebody where people are, how long they're watching, when they achieve peak simultaneous usage, what devices the audience we're using, even down to the operating system. That's incredibly valuable data that can go a long way in this kind of conversation.
I would just put this out to the team. It's interesting, the reaction. There's money, rights. I think music has its own special attributes, but take something like MasterCard, and they had their priceless experiences, and they were able to use some partners and some agencies with us. We happen to have an on-air app that we can hand out, and you can get super quality into the cloud. And we're dancing around scale. If you can take a stream, manage some level of production value. I don't think we have IP switching in the cloud on our plate just anytime soon, but you're going to get into multi-camera production feeds. You drop off to a CDN. That CDN could generate HLS that goes all the way to cable head ends globally. That's an enormous amount of scale that wasn't even technically feasible 4 or 5 years ago. And now is just a few hops away from a sort of Twitch experience where you've got 14-year-olds who can reach audiences from their 12 best friends to millions of people concurrently.
You know, bringing up Twitch kind of leads me into the next question. We've got 3 questions left that I had come up with. We don't have enough time for all of them, so I'm going to kind of call an audible here a little bit. But I do want to talk a little bit specifically about ticketing and subscription models as a means to generate revenue. And Tim, I think it makes sense to start with you. You know, we've seen bands like Fish, and again, I'm talking, you know, I go to the big name first, but you know, they've got not only a on-demand per concert model, but there's also subscription models where I can subscribe to every show on the tour. What are the pros and cons of individual event tickets versus subscription models for live events, music in particular?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, we don't really see tickets to individual events as being an interesting future. We think it is much more around something subscription oriented. We had a band on that joined a few months ago, a band with a decent following. Within 7 weeks, they had close to a $2 million annual recurring revenue run rate, which would have been about 50% of what they'd netted in a good year of global touring in the past. And that's recurring revenue. Within 7 weeks, we did all the marketing, all the development, and this is a subscription product. And I think ultimately that can be done at any scale. And that can shrink down to 15, 20 subscribers. And that's the beauty of this thing. So I think it's, again, we borrow a lot from gaming because gaming understands this stuff. It's why gaming has been so successful. They are selling something you belong to on an ongoing basis and a place where you want stature and you want to be seen and heard and participate. And I think that's actually kind of a foreign idea to music, the music industry. Music industries get up on stage with the giant amps out across the sort of faceless crowd of people, 3 chords in the truth, hour and a half later, you're gone. And maybe there's 1 or 2 people get to see in the green room, like, that ain't, that ain't. Like, this is a much more intimate, much more ongoing connected experience, but it's lucrative when it's done right.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point. You know, a subscription model only works for artists or performers of any kind who change things up from night to night, concert to concert, right? I mean, you know, most, not all, but most arena and stadium acts are playing roughly the same set with roughly the same, and they have to, right? I mean, especially if there's a lot, you know, Bruce Springsteen is the obvious exception, Fish is an exception. But you know, if it's going to be the same event in Los Angeles as it is in New York or Chicago or Milwaukee, there's no point in the subscription. But when it's a different event, when it's a different experience, that subscription model makes sense. Anyone else want to chime in on the ticket versus subscription discussion?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think either, again, I'll go back to the same thing. You know, you go to a concert and the amp blows out and the lead singer's drunk and falls off the stage, and you're going to want your money back, and you're not going to come back and see that band again. And I think the same thing, you know, goes with what we're all doing here. We have a duty to give the consumer a hell of a show, something that is like, that they can feel good about spending those 15, 20, 40, whatever the amount of money it is, that they watch and they feel like it was money well spent. Because if they feel like it's money well spent, they're going to come back and do it over and over and over again, or consider a subscription. And I think you have to have, people aren't just going to buy the subscription right off the bat. They're going to buy a ticket and try it out. And if that ticket and they try it out and it's great, then, oh crap, yeah, man, I'll put this reoccurring thing in there. It's kind of like, you know, the Netflix model. I mean, you're gonna find a show that you want to see, or you're gonna hear about it. You're gonna see a promo, or you're gonna see a teaser, you're gonna see a trailer, you're gonna hear your friends talk about it. You're gonna go in and you know, see if you can find a little piece of it somewhere, and then you're gonna come in and buy the subscription. So I think, you know, I'm always going to go back to this is even if it's just a dude strumming his guitar, you know, and if he's giving an authentic experience and it's real and people can connect with it every single time, they're going to keep paying for it. If people feel gypped and it doesn't work, then they're gone. And so you have to really concentrate on the experience and the quality and the production and the scale from the dude there all the way up. Because if you're buying a Metallica show for $20, you want to see a Metallica show on your screen. You want to hear a Metallica show. You want to feel it. And so you got to give it that all the way across the board. And important.
For the last question, I'm going to throw out kind of a curveball, although it is related to something we had talked about ahead of time, which is what kind of demand is there for on-demand or catch-up viewing of live events, which also brings into question, streamed events that are not live. I'm thinking of the event Bob Dylan did recently, or, I can't remember if Nick Cave at Alexandra Palace was actually live or if it was pre-recorded, but it seems there's also an opportunity here for live streamed events from performers, musicians, and otherwise that don't have to be live, if they're simu-live, if we want to use that term. Any thoughts on that?
I think the jury's in on non-live events. I just don't think they work online. It's a small and one and done type of business. I think so. The data is already in on that. The jury's spoken. I think people don't pay for that online.
I would agree. I think the audience wants a collaborative and participatory experience. And, I've seen in the pandemic, people were pre-shooting these performances and they're playing them out. It was really a music video, right? If you want a music video, it's free on YouTube. And, that's hard to sell, frankly. And you also remove the artist's ability to interact with the audience. So we do a live show every Thursday for AEG on their Twitch Bowery Presents channel. And during the performance, the audience poses questions. And at the end of their set, they sit down and they actually answer the questions and they interact. This is when there was no audience, but now obviously there's an audience in the room as well. But it's still a far more rewarding experience. And the fan has also come through the pandemic as well. They want authenticity. They want a real experience. And if there's a snafu of some kind, that's authenticity to the fan. And I think everyone's okay with that now, having knocked over a microphone in their living room when they were performing early on in the pandemic. And if you remember, the Grammys, I think 2 or 3 years ago, Adele did this big performance with a piano and she stopped and said, "Hey, I'd like to restart." There was some kind of snafu that happened and the performance was fine. Of course, people were speaking about it, but people want in the moment, collaborative, participatory experiences. They want to see, chat. I think the chat should be curated. It shouldn't be filled with rhetoric and nonsense. You can have polling and trivia and graphics and calls to action. And now that viewer has been transformed into a participant. Huge opportunity. They're more likely to come back. They're more likely to invite their friends back and kind of share it out as well.
And I would say even that live, just put my techie hat back on, but knowing you're trying to it's going to come down to how creative are the producers, how are the relationships with the artists. I think the evolution of the artists' income streams is definitely about to take a whole nother quantum leap, but you've got an entirely effectively mobile audience. So you need that mythical promo of television is now Instagram, TikTok, and we're not sure how all that will land. And trying to make someone aware that Adele is doing a live shot and they don't know, and rise above a very crowded marketplace to try to get direct to consumer attention. And there'll be much more of that. And I think that's what you're going to see is it's going to feel like a super curated, perfectly bespoke event, which it is, but there's going to be some pretty heavy technical firepower behind it that's backing it up.
Looking at the chat and the Q&A for a couple of questions here. This actually goes back to the ticketed event or the ticketed approach. Robert Young points out that Metropolitan Opera for 16 years now has been delivering live HD performances to 4,000 cinemas in 72 countries. So, we're focusing on live streaming here, and obviously the delivery has changed in those 16 years. But that model, certainly isn't completely brand new. Got a couple of questions about live streaming rights. and or dealing with music rights. And obviously, dealing with music rights is a nightmare. When you add live streaming on top of it, it's a huge challenge. The person in the audience didn't get any more specific than that, but as someone who's perhaps a smaller producer and wants to deal with live streaming concerts, what are the rights challenges that are involved?
I could speak a little bit to that, having been in that jungle for a long, long time. I mean, the big bright line is between recorded live and non-live. If you use recorded content, you're in a world of hurt when it comes to rights, because you got to get all the rights from the licensor, and not just the publisher, but the performers as well. And those can be owned by many, many people. Live streaming is just a publishing. It's pretty straightforward. It's statutory. It's not perfect, but you can get a dozen licenses from PROs, performing rights societies, and be basically covered. And that's certainly a reason why we're not doing anything recorded. Last thing we want to do is jump in that thing again. So that to me is the big dividing line.
Yeah, I think Tim said it perfectly, and which is why I encourage my clients to do a live music performance, and it's much more easy way to navigate that kind of landmine field of challenges with rights. But it's not we're not licensing this music in perpetuity like a film or a TV show. It's really kind of that in the moment, and there is a payment that goes out to the rights holders to do that, and it's a far easier way to live your life than creating this archive of recorded music you're gonna have a beast of a time walking through those challenges.
I'll answer to the gentleman who talked about the Metropolitan Opera, which I think all of us on here can say that that's just one of the pillars of the industry. It's gorgeous, it's amazing. But in that scenario, you've got, I think it's more like 1,700 or 2,000 theaters, but they're there. They've built an infrastructure just for that pathway. And what we're doing here is there's two forms of that. There's one where it's we're going to the Great Pyramids and shooting there when there's no infrastructure, or we're going to on a boat with Jimmy Buffett and doing it from that side. There's no infrastructure, or that there's people walking around with their cell phones, watching the concert, or taking their laptop to the park and watching it off 5G or whatever. So, I think there's the great evolution of that was kind of, yes, that was one of the pillars to our industry, with them live streaming those concerts, but that was into a set place. It's kind of a set recipe of dynamics there. And what we're doing is, it's kind of a whirlwind of on either side of the consumer and the producer, and even in the middle with the platform that you got to be able to go through cellular, you got to be able to go through land, you got to be able, wired, you got to be able to go through, there's satellite, there's all different, it's a multiverse of ways to do it and get it to people. So yes, that was a great pillar, and they have been doing that, but what we're doing now is that kind of magnified times 10,000 and its challenges.
I think that's a great place to end. We do have to wrap, unfortunately. Thanks again so much for your time, John, Adam, Tim, and Eric. And my cat jumping on my lap is my signal that I guess this one is wrapping up. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Conviva, Signiant, Limelight Networks, and Video Guys, and Zixi for sponsoring this session. The winner of the Amazon gift card is Linus Go. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll hopefully see you in a half hour when we talk about streaming in the post-pandemic workplace. Thanks a lot.
Great to see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
NDI November. NDI products and NDI guests, including Dr. Cross to kick everything off November 2nd. Start watching Tuesdays at 3 p.m.
Register now at videoguys.com to make sure you don't miss any of our NDI November webinars. Registering will give you a chance to win one of our giveaways, including a HuddleCam HD Pro EPTZ webcam with NDI, a Telestream Wirecast Pro license for Windows or Mac, a Bulldog Flex of your choice, the New Tech University NDI class and exam, or a copy of the unofficial guide to NDI.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.